Yeah, welcome to this video. Round 10 for this year's Tata Steel tournament. Been a long tournament, but we are nearing the finish line. And I'm going to start with a Dutch duel. Yeah, exactly. Wely against Giri. The first game of today that I'm going to show. And we have a Grunfeld. To switch on the sound, it's irritating. We don't have a Grunfeld, we have a Slav, I'm sorry. This is, but it's an understandable mistake. We see this, we'll see later why. Queen c2, g6, so a Slav with Queen c2, which covers the pawn, and Giri plays g6, which is a good response to this move. The main move is actually to take on c4, but g6 is good as well. Bishop f4, bishop g7, e3, very logical. White develops his pieces and now has c4 covered with the bishop, so it's a natural cover for this pawn. Yeah, here black has a couple of options. Bishop f5, for example, or knight a6 are moves that are possible. Giri, however, played an interesting move. He played c5. So losing a tempo with the c-pawn. This means we have now a theoretical position from the Grunfeld. This is where my mistake comes from. From the Grunfeld, with white having this queen c2 move as an extra move. So the tempo that black lost is queen c2. The question is this a useful move? And it seems that it really doesn't help white much. White took on c5, which is the logical reply. White doesn't really want black to take here on d4 and give him an isolated pawn. So white takes, and now queen a5, which initiates this counterplay along this diagonal using this pin. So a possible idea would be c takes d5, knight takes d5, and black has strong play against c3. So white shouldn't take. And this is just the same as in the Grunfeld, only then white would play rook c1. And in fact, he played rook c1 here as well. But this seems to help black quite a bit. Maybe it is better to go rook d1. But all in all, this line looks fairly decent for black. I had a quick look through my database after this game, and it looks quite decent. So this setup can be a good idea against queen c2. Yeah, rook c1 was played, and now black just developed. And the question is, what should white play now? In fact, he doesn't have so great moves in this position. Again, taking is in this case even better for black than in the position before. And, what exactly should you play if you cannot take? It's not so easy. He decided to play queen d2 and actually force the coming sequence. Takes on c4, bishop c4, queen c5, and queen e2, covering the bishop. And now the funny thing is, we again have transposed to the Grunfeld, but now with black having the extra move, and this actually is a huge difference. The difference is, if white would have the extra move, like in the Grunfeld, then he would have castled already. And with white not having castled, we see knight a5, which is a good move. Bishop needs to retreat, it was attacked. And now knight d5. And of course, this wouldn't be a problem at all if white had castle. Then he could simply take on d5. And now, yeah, well,
check.
This is very embarrassing. The rook is simply unprotected. White cannot take on d5. And black is threatening to capture both the bishop to damage the pawn structure and gain the bishop pair, and also take here. And, well, white castled. And now black took on c3, which is better also than taking on f4. And now we see that black's opening has been yeah, a big success, I would say. He managed to damage white's pawn structure. He's got a weak c-pawn. Black's got this great Grunfeld bishop. It's got free development. So black certainly has a slight advantage here. Very good opening result. Bishop d7. And all logical, putting pressure on the weak pawn. And bishop on a4 takes away squares like this on c2 or on b3. And it simply gets out of the way so that rook d8 would have some influence. Queen b2. The only problem really is it all looks very nice for black, but it's not so easy to make any concrete progress here. He played rook to d8, bishop e2, this intense bishop f3, getting some play on b7. Also e5 of course was threatened. The d3 bishop was just an unprotected piece. h5. Yeah, this is a fairly typical move. Intending maybe sometimes to play h4, gaining a tempo, or even attacking the bishop when the pawn is not hanging. And it also gives some luft for black's king. So it's a pretty good move very often, this flank pawn moves. Queen b4. And now I think exactly this is a real critical position. Here Giri decided to take on d4, which initiates a longer sequence of exchanges. Or not a long sequence, but it simply changes the position a lot. He had the alternative, and I think a good alternative, in taking on b4. Takes here. And then capturing on d4. The point is, if white would take here, then knight c6 is very good for black. He just wins a clear pawn. So white wouldn't take on d4 but take on a5. And now black will probably retreat. Bishop f3, bishop c6. And this is a very comfortable position for black. Those pawns are still somewhat weak, and you have a little bit more activity on those open files. So black has a distinct advantage. If it is enough to play for a win, it's hard to say, but this was a good alternative. He took on d4, takes on a4. This is the transformation that is now happening. Black winning a pawn, and this is certainly what tempted him to do this. However, if we look at this is pretty forced. It seems that this piece configuration is rather peculiar, because it's difficult to improve those pieces because they're tied together in some really unlucky fashion. Let's say queen d7. This was played. b4 and h4, normal moves. What does black do now to improve? It's really difficult. You cannot really. This knight is stuck on the rim. Knight b7 is hanging. Knight c6 hangs the rook. You cannot move the bishop. You cannot move this pawn. b3 would be a bad move really. Taking rook c2. It's good for white even. And it's difficult to make a move. I think the best chance was actually knight to c4, which he didn't play. And this intends to reroute the knight. Or here, he didn't play that. Surprisingly, I think it's relatively obvious idea to play this. He played the move rook f8, which looks a bit strange, but okay. This rook was always hanging. He wants to move the knight. Now bishop f4, knight c6, queen c7, and it's still very difficult for black to move anything. You need to be cautious even. Bishop f3 is a serious threat. Yeah, and here Giri decided to simply trade this down to a draw, acknowledging that you cannot really play for a win. Probably you really can't. This bishop f3 is very annoying. I think he missed this knight c4 chance. Here he played queen b6, and this trades down to nothing. attacking here. Yeah, counter attack on a6. Yeah, it's simply a longer sequence that leads to a dead draw. Yeah, and this is so drawn that pretty much everyone would manage to draw here. Yeah, not too exciting this game, but I think Giri missed some chance here maybe to press for more. And this opening is interesting. If you play the Slav and someone is playing this queen c2 against you, you actually have a good alternative to other lines in what Giri played here. It's also very forced. After g6, white almost always plays bishop f4. This is the idea of queen c2, and this is completely logical. And now it's c4, c5, and black seems to have a decent game. It's a good opening tip maybe to check out. Alright, so let's go to the next game. Aronian against Wang Hao. Levon playing c4. He's mixing up his first moves. c4, d4, knight f3, but he's played c4 earlier in this tournament with success, so again here. And Wang Hao goes for e5, and we have this reversed Sicilian 4 knights, g3, and now the funny move knight d4, which really doesn't look yeah, it looks a bit weird, because well, why is black moving this piece again, and why is he giving away the e5 pawn? The point is, if white would take, which is yeah, probably bad, then queen e7 is played, and the first and simple idea is, if white would secure the knight, then this is oops,
checkmate,
a very quick checkmate. So white cannot move the knight, really. He needs to protect it this way, and then d6 is played, knight d3, and let's say bishop f5, just one possibility. And white's position is completely yeah, completely unharmonious. How do you ever get your stuff developed here? Black has a big advantage probably already, with at least very good compensation. So white cannot take this. And okay, well, white just plays bishop g2.
Check.
Black takes. And okay, you can ask yourself, why is black losing all those moves? But it serves a purpose. One thing is, quite often, this knight on c6 isn't a particularly great piece, as it blocks the c-pawn, and you cannot use the c-pawn, which can be very useful in protecting d5. We see what black is doing in this game, just a couple of moves, and now c6. And this was the idea. By exchanging the c6 knight, black is allowed to put the pawn here and control d5 with the pawn, which is very useful. This has a very solid reputation, this line. Bishop d2, rook e8, all very normal. Rook c1. Yeah, this is directed against d5. If black would play d5 now, then you have this trick, securing a plus for white. So d5 is not possible. And this is why black went back to f8. I'm not so sure that I like this move, I must say, because it gets a bit passive for black now in the next couple of moves. Aronian played the very straightforward move e4, just clamping down on the d5 square and preventing black from playing d5. Here, for example, let's look first what Hao played. He played d6. Here, in fact, maybe it is an idea to play the original move, bishop c5, just back. It looks strange, but okay, let's say white has played e4 and just weakened his d4 square. Maybe this is an idea to activate the bishop. And this is also, because this really looks like a useful move, that I question this bishop f8 move. Maybe black had ideas to stay more flexible here. and keep white guessing a bit about the setup. Okay, bishop f8, e4, he didn't go back, he played d6. And now this bishop isn't really an active piece, but it's not a big deal for black, but it looks a bit passive. Okay, h3, this is a good preparation move, covering g4, so that you can play bishop e3 without getting harassed by knight g4. And a4, yeah, b5 was a positional threat that white needs to attend to. And now black played rook b8, intending to prepare b5 probably. And king h2. This prepares the f4 move. So white's idea is, as usual in this pawn formation, which is normally called the Botvinnik setup, white's idea is to play on the king side. He's got the stable center, and his advance is f4, maybe g4, f5, and a pawn roller on the king side, with all pieces supporting it from behind. In fact, I think that white is slightly better in this position. It's maybe also a bit of a matter of taste, but I have played these kind of setups for white for quite a while, and I like them. I think they are, especially from a practical point of view, easier to play for white. So now a knight d7 was played with the possible rerouting of the knight. Bishop e3, activating this piece a bit. And now a5. Yeah, this is fairly typical positional move, securing those squares, especially c5 for the knight. But it's still a passive move. Black cannot really alter the pawn structure now, and white will get his advance on the king side in. f4, knight to c5, and rook c2. And rook c2 is one of those moves that maybe wouldn't occur to lots of players, but it's a good move. It prepares those rook shifts to f2 or g2 even, and it allows other things that we see in the game, and I bet that Aronian had those kind of things in mind even. Bishop e6 and f5. So bishop e6, I'm not sure if this is such a successful move, because f5 is probably a move that white planned anyway. Bishop back and bishop f3. And this is interesting. This clears the way for the rook, as mentioned. And the rook can be used as a support piece for the g-pawn advance. But this bishop also has the idea to play bishop to h5 and putting pressure on f7. And this is a really unusual idea and a very interesting one. Don't see that too often, this kind of route to the weak f7 square. Okay, Wang Hao played b5, striving for counterplay. But in fact, it seems that after this, he's already in serious trouble. It's difficult though to give him a decent recommendation. This is a slightly passive position where white has an easy plan to make progress by pushing the king side. Maybe black needed to do something very direct to stop this. One idea, maybe this. Okay, but have a look at the game b5. It isn't so obvious why this is bad, but Aronian makes it look really, really bad. He takes on b5, black recaptures, and now this mentioned move bishop h5. And maybe this really wasn't correctly assessed by Wang Hao. Maybe he only thought of the g-pawn advance, but this is very concrete and very strong. The idea is sometimes just to sacrifice on f7 and initiate a deadly attack. We can see, for example, if black would play, he took, but if he would play, let's say, b4, attacking the knight, knight d5, and let's say bishop a4, yeah? Setting up this pin, winning the exchange, but winning the exchange is not important at all, because white has the smasher
check
on f7. This is really winning. King takes, and check, and even bishop takes h6, and here black can resign. This is a completely decisive attack. For example, if black would grab the rook, then white can even take here, and this is really winning. Takes f6, and we've got the f7 threat, and this is deadly. No way for black to defend here. I'm trying to think of something. Let's say here maybe to cover f7, but
check. Check.
Yeah, and this is, oops, queen h5 is the mate threat, and this is also leading to checkmate. Black cannot even, or is this something better even? Rook f5 is better. Yeah, this is mate. Huh? This is stronger. Yeah, white has a super dangerous attack with bishop h5. It seems to be decisive, really. This is just a sample line with b4, but this is such a strong threat. I don't see a defense, and I mean, I don't see a defense. It's not too hard an argument, but the computer also doesn't see anything to defend this position. Yeah, Wang Hao took on c4, and Aronian just recaptured. And now bishop to e7, probably intending this after all. But white now has more than one way to obtain a decisive advantage. He played one of them, took on c5, which in general would be a strategically horrible move to give up your strong bishop against this knight, but it's just winning for concrete reasons. Recaptures and queen d5, and this is the concrete reason. f7 is attacked, and how do you defend this? Here, in fact, he also had an alternative which was very strong. This was f6, also a very strong move. Bishop takes, rook d2. A point of this rook c2 move. Rook here to cover d7, and then bishop g4, and black can also basically resign here. However, Aronian played this move, which is perfectly fine. Only move to defend f7 is rook f8, and now rook d1, attacking d7. Only way to defend is retreating this piece to this miserable square blocking in the rook, and now white can win this pawn with tempo. Only move and take a second pawn. So white has just won 2 pawns for absolutely nothing, and this is of course enough for the world number 3 to win the game. Black went queen to b6, no alternative really, and he just exchanged and used the c pawn to make further progress. Knight d5 is good, and here he had a good way to reduce the material, just taking. Rook c4 takes, and this h5 bishop recaptures, and now we get a position where those pawns get exchanged, and at the end white has 2 extra pawns, and this is the main point actually, a big pressure on f7. This now
check
gets played, and here this is the point. Black cannot really cover f7 and resigned actually here. Thought he played one more move, but there is no move really. f7 gets lost, and white then has 3 extra pawns, and the c pawn is alone would be very decisive or very dangerous, and 3 pawns is simply too much. So very clean win for Aronian, but somewhat strange play by Wang Hao, but maybe he simply underestimated this bishop h5 move, which is really yeah, a bit unusual. I'm looking for a word here, but I don't find it. It's a really original maneuver, this f3 h5 f7. All right, so a good game by Levon, netting another win. And next one is Caruana against Nakamura, and this is a complicated game. Okay, let me load it. Somehow it's not working. Now I got the game. Caruana against Nakamura, so d4, and Nakamura surprisingly went for a Benoni, which is a very rare guest at top level chess, and it's not even a modern Benoni, it's this Benoni without this move e6 and the exchange on d5. Yeah, white has a huge range of possibilities. Caruana goes for this setup, which is also a possibility against the modern Benoni. But here it's a little bit different, of course, as black hasn't played e6. e6, for example, castles, and this would now lead back to the modern Benoni. But Nakamura plays this immediately. Bishop to c2. Yeah, this is because white wants to secure the bishop against knight e5, that it cannot be exchanged. Knight e8, this plans this knight transfer, intending something like this, and play on the queen side, which is fairly logical now that white hasn't put up so much control over b5. This is why he goes a4. He wants to prevent this b5 move. And now Nakamura places the knight on b4, which in fact in some cases isn't even such a great idea. It looks like a great square, but the knight is not doing so much. But here it always has an eye on this bishop, so it's probably justified. Bishop e3 and e6. e6, after all, it's probably really necessary to free black's position. Play this move. It's tactically feasible here. Took. And now d6 is not hanging because c2 is also attacked, so cannot go here, and you lose a whole bunch of pieces even. So black uses a tactical trick to play e6. Queen d2. Yeah, probably white wants to increase the pressure along the d file. Knight to f6, intending this. And he went for this. Yeah, the question is, should white have prevented this? A move like h3 is certainly something to consider to preserve this bishop. Yeah, in the game, this bishop was taken a couple of moves later, exactly now. And now, yeah, black actually netted the bishop pair, and I think can be rather satisfied with the opening result. He's got a very good bishop on g7, and d4 is the potential hole, which immediately was occupied. Here white needs to be cautious. If he would play a couple of routine moves without any special idea or purpose, then it could be that black is better relatively quickly. He's got two bishops and those strong dark squares. The only problem is he is not really well developed. Bishop still on c8, rook on a8. So if black is given time, he will have a good position. This is also why Caruana played e5. Now he wants to open up this bishop especially. And now we've got some trades. And bishop b7, which is a good and strong move. Black gives up a pawn for the moment. But the problem is he always has this counterplay on e5 and two bishops. And e5, this weakness, it's very, very likely that black will get the pawn back. In fact, in the game, this happened very quickly. Queen g4, queen e7, b3, and black got the pawn back. White had no way to keep this pawn on a dark square for long, so this is understandable. So yeah, how to assess this position? Black has got two bishops, and they're both very nicely positioned. A problem for black is the pawn structure. It's got this weak e6 pawn, which is a pass pawn, but it's still a weakness, and the king is slightly weakened. White's pieces, on the other hand, are not so brilliant either. This bishop has some idea to go to e4, but it's very difficult to imagine a stable knight position. e4, but you've got 2 pieces for 1 square. This doesn't help too much. So I think all in all, black is a little bit more comfortable here, but it's not easy at all. He decided to regroup, and black, of course, keeps the bishops on. He rather retreats this instead of exchanging, which would be a big mistake. So we have a couple of more moves which are quite logical, I would say. And now we have a queen trade coming. h3 to cover the mate, and black forces the queen exchange. So we have a pure endgame now. And certainly in endgame the black is somewhat better. He's the only one to make any progress. The best that white can hope for is some kind of fortress-like setup that keeps the position together. And, I'll just continue a couple of moves. It's actually, if you would have, or if I would have lots of time on my hands, I could analyze if there was some improvement for white to defend better. The fact is, after a couple of more moves in which Nakamura made sensible, good strengthening moves, white really was put on the defensive by now. Let's look a couple of more moves. Black gained space on the king side, activated this piece, but it still doesn't look too dramatic. However, a couple of moves later,
check.
Here, bishop to c5 check. And here exactly in this position is that white actually needed to take on c5 or play king e2. King e2 is similar though. After king e2, rook f4, then you need to take anyway on c5. There's no way to play it in another way, like this. Loses to bishop c2, and this pawn is gone. So taking on c5, if you need to do it anyway, then you can also take here, something like this. And now white has managed to get rid of one of the bishops, but okay, we also have absolutely all pawns on light squares with the light squared bishop on the board, and black has also the light squared bishop, so he's got this threat going. A rook exchange would be rather welcome for black, I suppose. And black basically has an extra pawn also. This is the e-pawn, as 2 black pawns keep 3 white pawns. Black is significantly better and has probably good winning chances, but this is what Caruana probably needed to do. It's very grim though. He played king d3, and this meets with a refutation. Maybe he also saw this, but hoped that Nakamura wouldn't see it, or he speculated. Check. Because the other continuation also looks really grim. So rook d8 check, king c2, and now in this position, if you have some time on your hands, then treat this as a puzzle and try to find the best continuation for black. It is not easy. Maybe the initial idea is apparent, but it's not easy to work out and calculate correctly. So if you want, pause the video and have a longer look what black should do now. I'm going to show it now. What black played here is the very strong move g4. Of course, attacking, no big choice. White needs to take with the pawn. Cannot go here.
Check.
This is one idea. And now black has a follow-up, and of course you needed to see this as well. The follow-up is the now rather logical move h3. The point being, if white would capture this pawn, then rook f8 wins instantly. with the threat rook takes f3, and white has no way to prevent it. He can play this move, but after rook f4, this is a deadly pin, absolutely. White has no way to prevent the loss of at least a piece here. Note how strong those bishops are. Brilliant. So if white would take on h3, he's lost. Okay, if you cannot take, you have a big problem. He played rook d1, and now after rook f8, king d3, black played h2, and yeah, somehow like it looks like some cheating has taken place. This h-pawn in a way sneaked around white's position and now is threatening to promote with the move bishop g1. And what's white supposed to do? He stopped the pawn with rook h1, and now black simply goes with bishop g1, and this is just a fun picture. Those two pieces or units just kill this rook. And after king e2, Nakamura played it very simple fashion, but it's just effective and winning. He exchanged this, and now it's invasion time for the king. And here Caruana resigned. You can simply think of this position as a position where black has an extra exchange, as this is simply one part of the chessboard, but it simply cancels each other out, and black can simply invade even here and win the pawns. It's really a simple win, and Caruana resigned. So really nice win for Nakamura with this very pleasing finish of g4 and h3. Very nice motif. Nakamura is playing a really successful tournament. He's on +3 now, and has a really good position in the tournament. He pulled some miracles in earlier games where it was really lost, but didn't lose at the end. And he's really converting what he's getting in terms of chances. So good stuff. Nakamura winning. Okay, so which game next? Let's go Anand against Karjakin. And this I will do relatively quickly. We have d4 by Vichy. Not too often, but he plays d4 once in a while. Against Karjakin, you can be relatively sure that he's playing the Queen's Indian. He's got one of the narrowest opening repertoires of a top player. It's rather predictable. And we've got the Petrosian system with a3. And
check.
This has been played before. This check is to lure black's queen onto some second-rate square, but it's debatable if this really is so great. Queen c2 back. And now black captured the c4 pawn, which white obviously wants to have back, so he plays e3. And here black has tried a number of moves, even moves that look relatively bizarre to me, like bishop takes f3, which is the main move, it seems. Taking and b5 is the idea. In fact, what Karjakin played is very rare, or even a novelty. I think it's almost a novelty. He played knight to d5, and this is completely different from bishop takes f3. Knight d5 is now leads to a simplified position, and this almost by force. Knight e5 makes sense, gaining a tempo on the queen, and it simply retreated. Yeah, this bishop needs to exchange. Not much choice. Recaptures bishop c4. And now black just took on c3. Queen takes. Castles. Castles, knight d7. Yeah, and white doesn't have much choice. He needs to take. Otherwise, black would take and give you a pretty ugly double pawn. So white took. Queen takes. And now we have a simplified position, which arises almost by force after this knight d5 idea. In this simplified position, white will be better, and probably for the whole game. but it's just one thing, the c-pawn, that white can play against, and it's a question if this really is enough to get something tangible going. We see that after a couple of natural moves, white has this pressure against c7, but black has defensive resources. He wants to exchange one rook if possible. And white prevents it. If white would exchange, it would have been even less to play for. Bishop c4, h6. And now we come to some period of piece shuffling. It's simply that it's difficult to make any kind of headway here. Both sides not really doing too much. Yeah, and here maybe king f8 was a slight inaccuracy, with Wishy now being even able to play b4. This is simply because after taking, black cannot capture now because there's d8 hanging. And maybe black should have played something that keeps this rook protected. And this now looks really uncomfortable because we see that white even gets to b5 with the pawn, and now has even fixed weakness on c7. And the point is, you can look at this also with the computer, and it gives white a very substantial advantage. And of course, if you look at this, you have no doubt that white is better. But how do you actually make progress to get to something concrete here? It's not at all easy. In fact, Anand tried, but he made absolutely no progress. He invaded with the queen on the 7th here, but black could defend with bishop a8. Of course, for black, this is a really unattractive grovel, this whole game, but he somehow got into this and now needs to defend this position. And in fact, it doesn't look like white can do so much. After a couple of moves, black managed to play c6 and get rid of this weakness. And in fact, Anand rather quickly took on c6 and combined this with the draw offer. Yeah, in fact, you could play on in this position. It's not like the complete super dead draw that you sometimes see, but I'm pretty sure that Vichy was pretty disappointed that he didn't really got something going against this rather passive setup. And now that black has relieved himself of this weakness, it's probably relatively easy to hold this. Yeah, bit of disappointment, as white was really looking good here in this game, but it didn't seem to be enough. Okay, next game is let's have a look at Harikrishna against Hou Yifan. And we got a Sicilian and the Scheveningen, rare guest nowadays in tournament practice because of g4, the Carrot's attack, which Harikrishna actually played. He didn't play bishop e2 like he played against Wely. Not exactly the same position, but the setup. White could have played. He could have played in a similar way, but g4 is known as the sharpest approach against Scheveningen. h6 is the main line, stopping the further advance. Now h4. It's again the sharpest move, and e5. And I must admit, I actually never have seen this move, e5 here. I know that this is possible with without the h-pawn moves, and this leads to some tactical sequences, which are not working now, but I really don't know the theory. I didn't look it up. We have a pretty unusual position with the knights on c3 and e3 here. It's really unusual in the Keres attack. Bishop e6 and knight to d5 looks normal, placing this in the center. And black decided to get rid of one knight and put this on e7. And after a couple of more moves, let's play these moves. Queen e2, bishop g7, queen b5. I'm not sure if the queen exchange is such a great idea, but let's have a look what's happening. Knight d7, rook c8, bishop b4. Yeah, I wanted to get to this position. We see that we have an imbalance in terms of the pawn structure. Black has got 4, again 3 on the king side, so it's clear that black should try to advance on this flank. And on the other hand, white has got 4 against 3, but he's somewhat behind in advancing the pawns. And therefore I'm not quite sure who's better in this position. White now went h5. This is really a prophylactic move against the play on the king side. He wants to make f5 less attractive, but Hou Yifan plays this quite nicely, I think. She played bishop f6 and now regrouped this bishop to g5. On g7 it didn't have much scope. On g5 it sits there nicely, controlling some squares on this diagonal, and has activated itself nicely. And black still has f5 as a possibility later. Got knight g3, b6, good support move, and white now took on c5. He took this chance to take now, because here, if black would take with the rook, then knight e4 is a possibility to simplify the position. However, I mean, this is playable for black. She took with the b pawn, which seems fine as well. It's a bit more interesting maybe to play in this way. Knight to e4 and rook d8 needed to cover d6. And now white took on g6. I'm not sure if this is such a great idea, to be honest. Maybe white should stay, like rook d3 or something. Some move like this. Yeah, f5 still. Maybe not exactly rook d3. Yeah, well, I don't like to open this position up for black's rook, but maybe there wasn't really something better. Well, he took and recapture, and now black's got the f file to work with. Rook h3. Yeah, white wants to get some activity for the rook. Rook f4, attacking. And he sacrificed this pawn, but in return got on the 7th rank. And now it gets tactical. This is hanging. Both pieces are hanging. And I think white really misjudged this position a bit, as this long tactical sequence here, or exchange sequence, which is rather forced, this actually seems to favor black. And this is due to the fact that black's king is playing actively. And if this pawn falls, then there are two pass pawns immediately, the e pawn and the g pawn, and in fact they are supported by the king. So this seems to be the most important factor here. Check. King to f5, rook d2. We are covering this pawn. G4, and here is a critical position. Here white probably needed to play a4, getting quickly something in terms of counterplay on the queen side. What he did is he played c3, and now black had a direct win, a tactical win, which however wasn't easy at all, with probably very little time on the clock. We see the clock times here. Of course, she didn't overstep the time limit, so a minus is nonsense, but she was very low on time probably. Here black could play rook h8, would be very strong. If white would take now, then there's rook h2 and this capture, and after this the g pawn. simply promotes. I mean, white cannot really prevent it. This pawn will promote. But it wasn't easy. She played king g5 first, and after rook e2 she got the right idea. Rook to f8. This is rather similar actually. The other thing was just a little bit more forcing. White takes on f2.
Check.
And white gets a pawn back. So black is actually at the moment a pawn down, but it's not a matter of quantity but of quality. This g pawn is very strong. Rook f5, e3, and we got some repetitions with little time on the clock. But now black goes forward. Yeah. Here it was impossible to prevent one rooks to be exchanged, and we've got this. And now after this the g pawn is ready to roll, and it advances in short order. Yeah, neat trick using the advanced pawn. And yeah, and here white resigned. This rook a5 is the last nice touch. Let's say rook here, check, and there's this checkmate threatening. So if white takes, we've got
checkmate.
This checkmate, and this this couldn't be prevented. So white would take and go here. Black, of course, simply can push the f pawn and get a new queen to win. So yeah, the second win for Hou Yifan. Great stuff. She's actually playing a rather good tournament. I mean, it looks always strange if you look at the bottom of the cross table, and okay, she's not doing too well, whatever. But she's won 2 games, and now she's actually winning rating points. She's really a huge underdog in this tournament, even with the 2-6 rating. So good stuff, winning another game here against Harikrishna. Alright, so the next game I'm going to show is Sokolov against Leko. And we have some sort of thematic tournament here with Sokolov playing the Rubinstein Nimzo with white, and e4, e5 is black. It seems like this way. Okay, we've got another line of the Rubinstein, and this is the Karpov line. Probably it's called the Karpov line because Karpov is the main, or was the main player to promote this setup. And all fairly logical, normal stuff. And this is similar to a game of an earlier round. This was Sokolov against Wang Hao. I'm not quite sure. We had Sokolov had this before, this line. Okay, he prepared the typical battery against h7, so with this kind of intentions. Rook c8, rook e1, knight h5. So knight h5 is also a fairly typical move to initiate exchanges, and of course the normal reaction here would be for white to maybe just take, knight takes, and then it continues, like, I don't know, knight e5. Yeah, well, knight, maybe this, but knight f4 could be an answer here. But this would be fairly normal and probably leading to some sort of equal position. However, Sokolov came up with an interesting idea, and this is queen c2. Let's threaten mate here. Leko's answer was g6, and the instant answer, okay, you could say, okay, what else? But in fact, the strange looking move f5 could be considered. It looks very weird, but it's not losing instantly. Of course, it looks bad, but it's not so bad. Black has this idea. Okay, but g6 was played. And this actually is a move, if you play this instantly, this clearly hints at some home preparation, because of course there's one move that white should consider now, and in fact Sokolov even played it. He played rook takes e6, the rook sacrifice. This means that this was probably a piece of preparation by Leko, because if you play g6 instantly, you knew beforehand that this should be okay for you. You needed to really check this before you allow this sacrifice. First, the easy point, if black would take.
Check. Check. Checkmate.
Then it's yeah, an early afternoon coffee, but you've lost the game. So black cannot take. So was this a blunder, giving away this pawn and allowing this threat? In fact, black plays knight f4 here, and he did so rather quickly. And this is a really good move. It protects g6, it attacks e6, and it has a number of tactical implications that can be for white really annoying. If white, for example, would just retreat, just to look at it. Okay, h4 is hanging. This makes no sense. Let's say white would take. Okay, knight takes. Yeah, and now the rook would move. Let's say you move to e1. Then black can simply take. Play this with queen g5 as a possibility. Also, knight takes d4 is in the position, and simply white is clearly worse here. This means bishop takes e7 is not really great. So what can you do? You need to move the rook, and h4 is hanging, so it's difficult. You could play rook e4, attacking this knight, but this allows knight to b4, and now we see that the b7 bishop is attacking the rook. So white loses material, whatever you do. Yeah, it's simply not Sokolov's tournament. He needed to exchange sack on e7 and play queen d2. This was the relatively best way to play. But after g5, it seems that white is in big trouble. If he would take on g5, which looks pretty good at first sight, black has at least this answer, leading to a good position. If white would retreat, then black could
check.
In this way regain the piece, and stays with an extra exchange and no problems in any way. So g5 is really a problem. White tried knight e5 to confuse matters, but now it was time for Leko to think about all this. He probably left his preparation, and after a while he played knight g6. And this is good and simple, really. White took, recapture, and black simply is the one attacking. And this is the problem. White has no attack, is an exchange down. And yeah, even black is the one with the active play along the long diagonal. Bishop retreated and just takes on g2. And this is not only grabbing a pawn, but also preparing moves like knight h4 to f3, for example. Queen c2. Okay, at least try with the mate threat, but okay, black simply takes this away and covers g6. Bishop e5, queen f7, a3. Yeah, this is an idea. But black just played knight to h4. And yeah, the final try was bishop a2 now, setting up this pin. But Leko had more than one good reply, but he decided for the very direct. Is this even playable? I'm quite irritated. Of course, g6 is g6 is covered. I was completely irritated by queen a2, queen g6, but of course this knight is covering. Yeah, queen takes a2 was Leko's move, and the point being, if white recaptures, then oops, of course this first. Rook takes c2, and black is winning. Rook takes,
check,
knight f3 with the really big check, and black will win even more material now. Let's say king here, bishop check,
check,
and king g2,
check,
knight e1 check nets the rook. So it continues to be a simply horrific tournament for Sokolov, losing again. And yeah, it's somehow it's yeah, I think this was really interesting play by rook with rook e6, but it's maybe his play in this tournament is somehow according to some German figure of speech, where we sometimes say that yeah, first we had no luck and then we even got bad luck. It's maybe not the best translation, but it's maybe a fitting description for his play here. All right, I got all games besides, of course, Carlsen against Lamy, which also incidentally was the longest game of the round, and this is pretty normal for Magnus. He simply has those marathon games quite often. So we've got a Caruana and just 92. Yeah, Magnus plays all openings, so cannot really say something like this is one of his favorites or something. He plays all lines, but of course he could expect the Caruana by Lamy, who played this all tournament. Yeah, bishop c4. This is a sideline, but not a bad one. The main move, of course, is h4, h5, this kind of setup. But this intends to develop the knight later to f4. In this way, knight f4. Yeah, here black's main continuation is to play bishop to d6. And this is fairly solid for black. And in fact, this is also the recommendation that I made in a video that I produced for ICC in German language, where I do a black repertoire, including the Caruana. There I have this bishop d6 move. But Lamy played something else, and he played b5. And this seems to be a novelty, or maybe one game that I found. Don't remember exactly, but it's a super rare move. So it's a case of, you know that Magnus is going to play some new move at some point, some surprise. And this is a case of get your surprise in first. But it's not a revelation or something. You can play this, but it's not especially great. Bishop b6, knight f4. Yeah, and here in this position type even, black has a choice. He can let white capture on g6 or take on f4. In fact, here black needs to reckon with h4, h5, and therefore it's probably necessary to take on f4, and he did this instantly. But this also means you've just given sorry, this also means that you just have given the probably best technical player on earth, given the bishop pair, and yeah, I'm not sure if you really want to do that. Of course, it's very tricky against him anyway, whatever you do, but it somehow feels like long suffering if you give him two bishops in a fairly quiet position. Okay, c4. This is an interesting choice and very straightforward. White could also consider to play slow moves like c3 first or a4 or something, but c4 is very direct. This invites the capture, and this is probably the best move also. And now we have an opening of the position where the c-pawn is a potential weakness. In fact, I think Lamy defended rather well. Let's just put a couple of more moves on the board. They are all pretty normal looking. f3, yeah, this covers some important squares. h6, knight e2, rerouting this knight. Knight to d7, drop back. And this is an important moment, e5. This is important because it changes the pawn structure. In fact, here, maybe he should have been more, should have employed a sit and wait strategy and just do nothing, like let's say queen b7 and a5 or something. I'm not quite sure about the concrete move, but simply keep the pawn formation as it is at the moment. This e5 move probably wasn't a great idea. I understand that he probably didn't have enough patience to defend this this position against Carlsen, but I think e5 helps white because it further opens the position up. d4, this isolated pawn, was a weakness, and now white gets rid of it. b3, quiet move, but strong move. Improving on the queen side and asking black, what are you going to do with the e-pawn? And he went queen b6 and knight c3, again strong. First you think, alright, what about this move? Black can just take here. Here it's important that white is able to play knight a4. This wasn't played in the game, it's just a line. Knight a4 as the capture
check
here with check gives black some activity. The d3 pawn supported by the bishop is some source of counterplay. You don't want that. But knight a4 is strong. This was played, but what I'm talking about is that this move is stronger. Queen would need to move, and then you just take it. And now we see white still has got the two bishops, but the d and e pawn have been exchanged, and this must be in white's favor. d4 was a potentially weak pawn, while e6 was a perfect part of black's pawn skeleton. White is clearly better with the two bishops and the weakness on the c-file, this pawn. In the game, he played knight f6, which leads to a similar structure. Takes. And now we see black managed to exchange e against d pawn, and this is just favorable for white. Maybe he just wanted to get rid of more pieces to simplify, but I think it's a positive development for white, this exchange. Queen back, and just improving further, getting the queen out of the d file and getting this into the position. So how does white make progress now? It's not easy at all. h4. This is a very good move, and something you need to try to remember, that often pushes of the flank pawns can be a good way to improve your position. What is white's idea? The idea is to maybe play queen to g3, looking at this g7 pawn, and threatening h5. And with those pawn moves, you can often, in a way, tickle your opponent to make more weaknesses. It's a good move that is worth remembering. It's just a sample position, but very often those flank pawn moves are important to create further weaknesses. Black played f6, retreated, and king h7. And now Carlsen took, and this is a remarkable decision. I mean, I'm pretty sure, of course, I'm by far the weaker player, but I probably wouldn't take on d5. I simply would love my two bishops too much, and would try to continue playing with those pieces. So maybe, let's say, bishop c5 or rook d1, or trying to improve the position further. Maybe prepare something on the king side, I don't know. Well, Carlsen is very concrete here. He just took on d5. And this has got 2 points. If black would take with the c-pawn, then white has the very strong move h5. Look, the h-pawn, it's a useful pawn. If black would take now, then there's queen h4 with the tempo, retreats, and rook c7. And this is the problem with the pawn recapture. It immediately opens up the 7th rank, and now with threat queen takes f6 or bishop takes f6, black is completely busted. Rook g8, rook e2 e7, and this is just over. Black would let's play a silly move, takes here. Then there's even
check.
This one.
Check. Check. Checkmate.
And a mate. So this is why after this capture, black took with the rook and not with the pawn. And after taking with the rook, it's simply a pawn. Magnus so just traded his bishop pair for an extra pawn, and now continues to grind this position. It's I don't know, it doesn't look like so much, but he manages after a while to make some progress. And in fact, I'm honest, it would be rather interesting to look at this in depth, but I'm already on minute 71 of this video, and this continues for about 30 moves. It's simply too much to ask to do detailed analysis here. He slowly but steadily made some progress in this.
Check.
Even with the queens off. And yeah, one rook, pair of rooks down. But white has got a pass pawn. Yeah, the position is clearly better for white, and he just presses on. Now it gets interesting again, because he needed to really exactly calculate that black's counterplay is not good enough. Bishop f8, rook takes on a2, and king f4. This is not too difficult, but still very strong. Rook takes g7 is threatened with really a deadly check on g7. Black needs to make some space. Played this.
Check.
And retreated all the way back. Now those pawns are weak, and he immediately goes to win this pawn. But you always need to take into account that there's this a pawn. Rook c2, and he just took. And you need to really calculate this correctly. It looks a bit unnatural, all this here, bishop on f8, but there is simply nothing. You could give this check, but white just retreats, and there's no way to make use of this bishop position. So let's say this, white can just play this move with the tempo and intend bishop g7 check. So a3 is what was played. And now rook a7 was just the human move to play. In fact, there was an alternative, but I need to have a look at my analysis. There was a really strange alternative in this position that I forgot about, but I know that it was when he played rook a7. Just give me a second here. Yeah, rook a7. He had the move bishop to c5, which looks really weird for a human. The idea is after a2 to play bishop d4, and of course this this looks at the a1 square, so cannot promote. But this is a very unusual piece set up on the long diagonal, and it really seems that there's no way for black to make use of this rather weird setup. Let's say here bishop e5, and it's all protected. Black has really no chance to do something, and white next move will be rook a7, and then the g pawn would be pushed, plus king discovered checks. So this was even a bit stronger, but it looks rather unnatural to play this way. Rook a7 is completely okay, of course. a2 and g3. Just keeping this pawn and improving afterwards.
Check.
Give this check. And white brings the bishop back to help. Yeah, now the bishop covers this. And you always needed to calculate this, that this pawn is not suddenly becoming the winner for black. But he doesn't really make any calculation mistakes in those simplified positions. And after rook a1, in fact, Lamy resigned. Yeah, he could have continued for a while, but well, what can you do? This guy is playing like a machine in those positions, making almost no mistakes. So black resigned, and Carlsen now is on 8 out of 10, which means he's on track on maybe equalizing or even improving on Kasparov's 1999 record result in Vike, when he scored 10 out of 13, which is really a brilliant result, plus 7 wins and 6 draws if you don't lose the game. And yeah, well, Magnus is maybe able to repeat this. If he would make 2 out of 3 in the last 3 rounds, he would equal the score. Or maybe there's even more possible. You never know with him. Alright, thanks for watching this video. It's been quite long and it's already really late here. So I hope I didn't make too many silly mistakes, and I hope I also didn't forget a game. This seems to happen. I think I have them all. Yeah, thanks for watching. I'll be back with the video on maybe on Friday or on Saturday morning. There's no round on Thursday, so new games will be played on Friday, and I'm not sure if I'll be able to make a video on Friday. Maybe it will become only, maybe it will be possible only on Saturday for me to do this. Thanks for watching, and I'll be back soon.